All right, it should be recording now. I don't know how that's going to work. All right, so we're essentially going to go through most of this, hopefully. I really don't want to go through all of it, but we'll just probably skim over it. All right, APUSH period 3. So our first key concept is that the British attempts to assert tighter control over its North American colonies and colonial resolve to pursue self-government led to colonial independence movement and the Revolutionary War. Um, All right. So the first thing that we need to know is that the French tried to get into America, start that trade war, whatever. As you can see here, they have a fur trade for beavers and stuff up there by the Indians. That's near Canada, and they also try to spread Catholicism to the Indians. Now, then there was a kind of a huge war over territorial disputes between the two, and this would cause the French and Indian War. Um, we'll get to that right here. So basically, the French got kicked out of North America, and the British started coming in, started colonizing it, and it led to the Treaty of Paris of 1763 and ended the French and Indian War. And right after this, we got the Pontiac's Rebellion. So basically, the Indians, after losing the war, thought that we were overstepping our boundaries. So Pontiac rebelled against us and decided that they needed to get back their land. Now, of course, this didn't happen. He lost horribly, but it was kind of like the thought that mattered here. So, in response to this, Britain made the Proclamation Line of 1763. Um, so all of this this caused a huge British debt. So after all this happened, Britain was paying out of pocket for all of the Americans' wrongdoings, and they even made a navigation not a navigation act. They also made the Proclamation Line of 1763, which made Americans not go past the Appalachian Mountains, past that point or colonize. Of course, being the Americans we decided to be contrary and go past the mountains and settle anyways. So because of that, it led to more, wars and battles and stuff, and it just kept amassing British debt. And they, of course, wanted to have some taxes to compensate for all this trouble they went through. Um, and up until then, it's kind of been to the point where America didn't really have an active role model. Britain was so far away they couldn't really get into the country or anything and like force their dominance over them. But after all this happened, they're like, okay, we need to pick up the slack. We need to kind of be a bit more forceful with our rules here. Now, after all this, they started passing more acts and stuff. They would pass some navigation acts and the Currency Act and the Stamp Act. The Navigation Act said that they weren't allowed to trade with other countries. They had to be restricted to Britain's trade. The Currency Act kind of banned paper money, so they would only be reserved to like hard gold and silver and stuff. The Stamp Act would, bring more taxes on paper goods like mail and stamps and stuff. And all of this, kind of rustled the jimmies of the Americans. They were not very happy about all of this happening. So, because they had freedom before, they were kind of mad now that they had to be watched over and stuff. And we can see that this is like the first spark, the first hint of an American Revolution. See that in a minute. Um, so just going back a little bit, the British's main idea was mercantilism. So they believe that the power of a country is determined by its wealth, and you still see that today. Many people believe that a country's power is based off of its economy, and it somewhat is. So having complete dominance, complete control over an economic market is an extremely important theme throughout history. And that's also why they would pass the Navigation Acts to make sure that we wouldn't trade with anyone else. They wanted to make sure that Britain remained on top of the trade. And we see that said here. Stamp Act and Sugar Act. So like I said, they would put more acts on like sugar and tea and stamps. And now this wouldn't be a bad idea, but America was kind of struggling with the paradox of being this whole new country, this whole new experiment for Britain. And they feel like they've been doing them a justice, kind of helping them out. And they weren't getting any direct representation in Parliament. So it would be like how if you were living in the United States for 10 years, doing your service or a duty to your country, and they're like, yeah, you can't really vote. So you're kind of doing all this for your country, and yet you're not getting the right to vote, even though you pay taxes. And that's where you get the phrase tax without or taxes without representation. So they wanted less taxes and more representation in the parliament, and they would not get that. This and like this says, this pops up again: solitary neglect. Since they didn't let, since they let them do as they please for a bit, the U.S. got a little bit cocky. They disobeyed the navigation acts, started triangular trades with France, Britain, and the Netherlands. But then again, after that French and Indian War, all that quit. Britain came in there and started buckling down a bit, and that's when America started to get a little bit rebellious. So that's kind of the events that led up to there. And then we get the Declaration of Independence, as you know, is written by Thomas Jefferson. It was based on John Locke and the ideas of enlightenment. So we already see that America's kind of drifting towards the idea of equality and representation, or at least for white men. But we see that they're a bit more interested in liberty and stuff like that. So this is really important. The Declaration also stated that the people of a government can revolt if a government does not do its job correctly. So obviously this was kind of a passive-aggressive remark towards the British people, how they did not like their government. But this argument would later be used in the Civil War to justify why the southern states could secede. Not there yet, but 1 second. I'll be right back.
Funny. It's just me and you, Nathan.
Sorry about that. I'm back.
That it is. That it is.
Any questions so far?
No, I don't think so.
I'm just making sure that I'm not missing anybody here. All right. Now back to. I see red. Back to where was I at? Oh yeah, quartering acts. So basically, they barged into people's houses, said, "Yeah, we're the government. We can sleep in your house if we want." And the people didn't like that, obviously. That was one thing. Was that the Second Amendment? No, the Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. Quartering acts, Third Amendment. Yeah, Third Amendment. No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any home. So that's one of their big issues. I think that was in the grievances of the colonies. Self-ruled government. They wanted that. Towards Enlightenment beliefs of natural rights. That's where we get the rights of life, liberty, and happiness. The pursuit of happiness. Okay. We had the Sons of Liberty. I don't think they're that important, at least not now, since we got one question and separate thing. All you need to know is that they were kind of a radical group. I suppose you could go as far to call them terrorists because they use violent methods. The Sons of Liberty would also offshoot the group that did the Boston Tea Party. If you didn't know, they'd drop the crates off the ship. Benjamin Franklin was the writer, so he would basically use all these Enlightenment ideas, which would later come back to bite the United States in the butt during the Civil War. Groups such as the Association and the Stamp Act Congress called for boycotts, and I don't know if you guys remembered, but anybody who was not to follow these boycotts would be beat up, just completely beat up.
As it should be.
As it should be. We don't like any British sympathizers in here. Now, the Daughters of Liberty participated in boycotts, producing homespun cloth to make up for lost products from Britain. So even the women were doing their part. I guess if it was if the broad topic was about feminism, I guess you could make some claim that even during this nationalistic time period where America's kind of getting their roots and trying to rebel, even the women are kind of helping out during the household, doing what they can. That's kind of an evolution for women's involvement on the United States. I don't remember Baron von Steuben. I don't remember him. I don't remember James Armistead Lafayette. Benedict. Oh, I remember Benedict Arnold.
Didn't Lafayette write something? Can't remember.
No, it's a
Oh,
famous.
they're spies.
Let's see.
Some kind of spies such as Lafayette. Okay, never mind.
American double agent. Oh, he's black. I guess that's why it's African American. Okay. Women in the armed forces were called camp followers, and they were nurses, and they cooked and cleaned. Another way that women helped out in America. The British were more economically powerful and stable, so obviously they should have won. Problem was, it was on our side of the battlefield, and we also had great leaders, and they had terrible leaders, which gave us a bit of an advantage there. The British didn't have a strong reason for fighting. Of course, we were fighting for our lives and our independence, or so we claim. The U.S. had French. What the U.S. had French and alliance. I guess they made an alliance with the French after the Battle of Saratoga, and so they were kind of working together. And I know the British kind of hired most of the Native Americans to go against them. Saratoga, French now willingly aid them. Yorktown was the deciding battle of the war.
Was this when the XYZ affair was, or was that another time? When was that?
Okay, so this is. I think it's a bit later. Let's see.
I don't remember what the XYZ affair was. So I was just wondering. I don't remember.
That was. Yeah, that was a bit after. I think that's down here somewhere. Let's see. Oh yeah, it's right here. That's with France. Yeah. That's during President Adams' era.
Okay.
So is the XYZ affair in period 3 or?
Yeah, very, very end of period 3. It's like at the end, like late 1790s.
Okay, I was wondering if it swapped to period 4 or not. But then...
No, I thought we covered it a lot later, but apparently not. All right, we're going to go through only the things that seem like the most big parts of it. John Locke argued humans were basically good. That's the Enlightenment things that we get in the Constitution. Thomas Paine's Common Sense taught about the disadvantages of monarchy. City Upon a Hill, John Winthrop. So now, let me look up the quote real quick. So, yeah, it's not okay. It was a sermon.
Wasn't just like. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, wasn't it like where he was like, "We shall be a city upon," like Boston, I think it was, or someone should be a city upon a hill, so like other places around could look up at them and like use them as a role model.
Yeah, an example to the world. So yeah, they're trying to be an example to the rest of America, kind of show that they're better than the British, I suppose. American exceptionalism. We would also get the Pilgrims, the Puritans, the Maryland Catholics, Quakers, German Pietists, and others all came to America to pursue religious freedom. Of course, those people would settle down in Pennsylvania and stuff. That wasn't the main reason, but like for the foundation of America. But many people did come to America just so they could sustain their religious freedom without being lynched. We would get a Great Awakening, and that would help kind of with the nationalism thing, women's rights. The whole burning in hell from what's his name? Sinners in the hands of an angry God.
Yeah.
That was around the time of that Great Awakening. Um, that was when people were like, "Oh, you need to choose your own path, separate church and state." We the people, kind of like we are all in this kind of thing. Uh, this is starting the rise of the Federalists. The whole Hamilton, Madison thing. Let's see. Any other comments before I go on? Oh, the Seneca Falls Conventions before I go on any further. That's another example of feminism. Women rewrote the Declaration stating all men and women are created equal. So this kind of the Constitution would later be used to help prove that women should have rights in the government and law.
Question: When did you? Sorry, this kind of thought. Where did you find this at? Was it in the review schedule?
Period 3. This was Miss Westbrook sent out. Let me see here. Oh, I just spilled water everywhere. That's great. If you go to Google Classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And you go to APUSH.
Also, did you just write your SAQ on Google Docs and then submit it there?
Yeah. I'll show you guys in a minute what that looks like. If you go here, she sends this review schedule. And at the top, it says you should be working on the key concept matching activities throughout the week. You go to here, and you click that, and it'll open up this. So it's not something that you're, it's just like a kind of thing you want to, if you want to look over, you can. But
Holy cow, it's a lot.
Huh?
So holy cow, it's a lot.
I know it's a lot, but basically all of this right here is just repeating what we said, and it's activities. We're not going to do that. And a lot of it can be boiled down to a couple of sentences. We're about halfway through. All right. So, gosh. Okay, maybe we aren't halfway through. Okay, we're right here. All right, Revolutionary Wars. Blacks start fighting in the army. Many New England states outlawed slavery in this era. You can already tell that there's going to be a bit of tension here in the Civil War about this whole slavery thing. Not to spoil anything, but that's really going to happen.
What?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
No way, dude.
Yeah, I hate to tell you this, but it's going to bite us all.
Slavery causing problems? When?
That's a thing I forgot to mention. The founding fathers dodged the bullet here and basically said, "Yeah, I'm not going to make it illegal to have slaves. We're just going to let the next generation just screw around with that idea," and they did. So that happened.